Oh yeah, got it from Challenge Roth. Did you know a couple of days ago I did Challenge Roth? Oh yeah, it's from Challenge Roth at the weekend. Oh, just a bit stiff from Challenge Roth. I did Challenge Roth at the weekend. Sub-10. Sub-10. I just firstly want to acknowledge how much of a triathlon YouTuber I am out on a recovery ride on a gravel bike. But anyway, this video, as you've probably guessed, is about Challenge Roth. Hopefully, you'll have already seen my race day video from the event. If you haven't already, I'll leave a link to it down below or on screen or something. Please do check it out. I'm so incredibly proud of the video that Liz was mainly responsible for capturing. This video is going to be talking about the performance side of my day. I often, and I quite like, focusing on the emotion and the experience, because that's what we do as age group triathletes. However, I don't want you to think that I don't care at all about performance, because I absolutely do. And like many people, we train week in, week out to perform, don't we? So then when I do a race, I do reflect on, often privately, sometimes just in my cycling club group, you know, just about how you perform. So I'm going to think about it now, talk about it. I'd much rather do it here than sat in front of a Training Peaks screen. I know that. I know some people are complete data nerds, but this is just easier for me to convey. So all good races start with the swim, don't they? And the swim in Roth is absolutely perfect. It is in a canal. There's a couple of like out and backs, but there's not too many turns, so it should be a fast swim course. People say it measures a little long. I got it at 50 meters long, but that's well within my margin of error for GPS and for me not swimming in a straight line. So I'd say it's pretty accurate, to be honest. I swam 1 hour and 13 minutes, which is high 140s or low 150s per 100 meters. And that's exactly where I deserve to be. Based on my middle distance swimming, so I recently swam a 70.3 in the swim leg I did in 34 minutes. That put me at a 108, but I can't swim the same pace. So exactly where I expected to be, exactly where I deserve to be. Sure, I want to swim faster, but the reality of my lead up to this event is that I was given about 4 weeks notice, so I had a huge amount of time to really be specific for those longer sessions. But actually, I don't think it's the be all and end all. I actually strongly believe that age group triathletes just go out too hard on races. I think we're easily influenced by people you see on the internet, myself probably included. I don't know if I'm part of that or not, but you know, when you see so many people talking about, oh, I'm racing hard and training hard, I think it makes people overestimate their ability, and that is the undoing of a lot of people, I think. Anyway, so the swim was okay, exactly where I wanted to be. I know I need to swim faster. If I want to be better, I need to swim faster, but it's just input versus output, isn't it? I'm not going to commit to going to the pool 5 days a week. Transition 1 was absolutely fine, really swift. I couldn't really pick any fault with that, to be honest, mainly because the volunteers do everything for you. You just get out of the water, take your wetsuit off, run to your bike, and everything's been given to you already, so out on the bike. The bike course, now this is my main discipline, to be honest. So I cycle a lot. A lot of people call me a cyclist that does a bit of triathlon, and I'd agree to an extent. I do focus on triathlon, but I really enjoy cycling. Club cycling, road racing, crit racing, time trialing, all the above. I think it's really good all-round training, and I actually really enjoy it. So therefore, in a triathlon, the cycle seems to be my strongest discipline. Now, with that in mind, I have to balance it, right? I can either go easier and hopefully have a better run, or I can go harder and make more time up on the bike. And I think I sort of sit in the middle. I do different things at different events based on the course and based on the race dynamic and so on. This specific day at Roth, all I'd heard from anybody I'd talked to was don't get carried away in the first laps. That's exactly what I did. When you've done so many races and they've gone so wrong in the past, it's quite easy to hold yourself back. I was trying to soak up the emotion. It was pretty busy on course, so instead of getting angry and like having to try and power past people, I was just letting myself get held up a little bit, not perhaps, you know, attacking people over climbs, and just really easing into it, focusing on, right, in this first half an hour, I want to get a gel down me, I want to get some fluid down me, I want to tip some water on me, focus on all those things, and then as a byproduct of that, the ride starts relatively easy. Now, around half an hour into the ride, I was passed by a couple of guys, and I thought I'm going to try and go with them. You can draft at 12 meters distance, so you get some benefit, not a huge benefit, but it's worthwhile having. And that's what I did. I rode with them for the majority of the first lap, I think. I wasn't too good at sitting in the draft. Sometimes I was further off, sometimes I was, you know, going past them and not meaning to go on the front but having to, and those sorts of things. But it was just a case of riding within myself, and oh, if there's a bit of benefit, then great, but actually I'm not gonna flog myself to stay with, you know, 2 other people. We were passing lots of people, and some people come with us, and it was a bit of like, I didn't know if that was, you know, the group for the day. I flicked onto on my screen, I don't have heart rate, because I don't really use heart rate in racing. I tend to ride on how I feel, but I was keeping an eye on power. The main reason being to hold myself back, because it's all too easy, isn't it, in the first hour to do 300 watts or whatever, and then it really bite you towards the end. And that was exactly what was happening. When I was coming to little climbs, I was really surging on, but it wasn't feeling like I was surging on, but I could see it in the numbers. So I used that just to hold myself back a little bit. After the first hour, I'd normalised 250 watts, and I knew that that was about 15 to 20 watts above what I'd expected to do and what I've done in the past at full distance events. So I knew then I needed to ease off a little bit. We went up the main climb to Reading. I worked hard up there, and then on the descent, I got dropped by I think both of the guys that I was riding with, just because I wasn't descending very fast. There's a lot of people around, and I wasn't that focused on risking it basically for a few seconds on the descent. And when they'd left me, I thought, good, that's fine. I'll continue riding on my own and settle into my own pace. Hello, you right? Hello. Hello. I haven't got any snacks, sorry. I haven't got any food, no. In terms of fueling and nutrition, these things are pretty much an eating competition. If you can eat and drink and stay cool and pace yourself, you will have a good day. And if you can't do those things, at some point, it will become unraveled. So I had a very clear nutrition strategy. I do work with Total Endurance Nutrition. I pay them as a paying customer, so I'm not like promoting them as a partner to the channel or whatever. But Sam at Total Endurance Nutrition really guides me through what to have. But it's really not rocket science, I don't think, in terms of get lots of carbs down, you get some caffeine down, you get lots of fluid down you. Okay, will do. So my fueling strategy was as such. I had 2 bottles on the bike made up of OTE super carbs, which is 80 grams of carbs in, and it also had 1 gram of sodium in. And then I think I had 8 or 9 super gels, OTE super gels in my pockets. They're 40 grams of carbs each. My plan was in the first hour to do the first bottle of carb mix and have some water. So to have done the first bottle, chuck the bottle and get a bottle of water and have some of that, whilst also having had a gel at 30 minutes and at an hour. So that is a big first hour. That's like something like 140, 150 grams of carbs, but I'm catching up from the swim. Before the swim, I did have a gel and a little chew before I started. I catch up from the swim, so I needed to get that in me. And I've sort of towed the line of then having a gel every half an hour and drinking a bottle every 45 minutes or so, bottle of carb mix, plenty of water in between as well. About 70k, Liz was at the top of Solarberg with a bottle for me, and I just about finished my second bottle of my own nutrition. She gave me a bottle which was a different flavour. It was a brand I used to work with last year. It was like a bit of a sweeter flavour, so I wanted a bit of a change, but not as many carbs in it. So I tipped that in my bladder, and then had water behind me. And then as I went through the ride, I slowly diluted that with water because I didn't want to feel as sick as I was doing. I felt like I was really cramming in loads of nutrition, and I was borderline, like I'd have a gel, feel sick for 10 minutes, then feel great for 20, then feel a bit like, oh, I need another gel, and just, ride that roller coaster. But I felt that worked pretty well because that meant I was getting in as much as I could. I was also tipping a ton of water on me, particularly at the top of hills. If you tip the water on your front and then it's sat there, as soon as you start descending, the wind chill effect makes it feel really cool. That was working really well. And I got off the bike feeling good. In terms of pacing, it pretty much stayed the same. On the last lap, I did catch up with one of the guys who I'd rode with on the first lap. And then I think I distanced him maybe halfway around the second lap, and then rode on my own for the majority of the remainder. There were a couple of bits that were really busy, and you had to just weave through people and do your best to either not, draft, or also not get knocked off your bike, not go over the centre line, and all those things. So it detracted a bit from the actual race focus, but that really helps me because sometimes I can get focused on, right, this is a race, and treat it like a time trial, forgetting that I've got a long run to do afterwards. So it worked really well. And in the last half an hour or so, I made a fair few places. I felt really strong, but again, I was trying to hold myself back, thinking I'm not finishing a time trial here, I'm finishing a bike ride into a marathon run. In terms of numbers, I normalised 245 watts. I averaged about 210. I'm 90 kilos, so that's about 2.8 watts per kilo. So not massive numbers, but decent enough, I think. And I felt like I rode the course pretty well, surging on up the hills, recovering down the hills, and keeping the pace up on the flats. Led me to a 4:46 bike split, which was just over the 200th fastest bike split of the day, which I'm very happy with in a field of like 3,500, 4,000. That puts me right in contention in terms of if I was aiming for a sub-10 hour overall, I needed to be around there on the bike. And I actually got off the bike feeling pretty good, or as good as you can be having cycled 112 miles, and feeling like I'm in a good position. I've certainly in other races been in worse positions, getting off the bike thinking, I don't know if I can run a mile. T2, in and out, no real dramas. I had put in a bag in T2, 6 super gels, a bottle of carb mix in like a soft flask, and a bottle of electrolytes in a soft flask. The electrolytes were OTE, pineapple, hydrotaz. I put 2 of them in one bottle, and the carbs were Full Steam, the brand that I'd worked with last year, which was a bit sweeter, in the other bottle. The only issue was that these had to be wrapped the day before, and so they'd sat basically red hot. I forced the electrolytes down me because that was one thing I thought I hadn't had much of in the last hour or 2 on the bike. And then the carb mix, I really struggled. I had about 2 or 3 mouthfuls. It actually tasted like a little bit mouldy, as if like it'd been hot for so long and like it had cooked. I don't know if that happens or not. So I thought I don't want to be ill, so I just chucked it. Not ideal, but I knew I had lots of gels on me. Same sort of plan on the run, to be honest. Every half an hour to have a gel. That lasted until 3 hours in. But before then, performance pacing. I set off, and the first 2 or 3 miles I did at just over 8-minute miling. My plan when I got off the bike was to have a look at how I was doing time wise. I can't control the time on the bike, can I? I'm riding to power and effort and just how it's riding. I knew then that once I get off the bike, that's how I can then think, right, what sort of time am I on for? What do I need to do whatever time? I did have sub 10 hours in my mind, but because the bike was such an unknown to me, I wasn't like super driven that, right, today is a 10-hour day. It was a case of, I'll see where I am off the bike, and if it's doable, I'm certainly going to give it a crack. So when I got out on the run course, I had 3 hours and 55 minutes to get to the finish. That would mean I'd run sub 10 hours overall. So I set off, and the first 2 or 3 miles are about 8-minute miling. That's too fast. I don't need to run that fast. I could have run 8.5s, 8:40s, but I was feeling really good, and my heart rate was low, and I was focusing on like sorting out all my nutrition in the first couple of miles. It was quite shaded, so I thought, well, there's some time in the bank there, but I know that sometimes banking time isn't the best thing to do. When I got to 3 or 4 miles, I really eased it off. I say eased it off, the pace slowed, and I just didn't battle it. I got to maybe 8:20s, 8:30s, and that remained until about the half marathon point. And I felt like sometimes I'd look at my watch, and on the canal the GPS flits around, and I thought, oh, it was a bit too slow, a bit too fast. I thought, no, just keep running a consistent pace. I was getting past quite a lot, which is demoralising, but it's one of those things. And I felt like I was moderating the effort level. Every time I felt like the pace was slowing a bit, I thought, I'm not going to dig in deep yet, because I'm going to need that later on. And when I need to go deep to the well, I need to go deep to the well, but I can't be doing that halfway into the run. So I went through halfway, and I think I had something like 2 hours and 5 to do a half marathon, or just over 2 hours, something like that. So I was trying to do the maths in my head, and I couldn't quite work it out, but I just thought, well, I'm just going to keep running. 1 mile, keep it about 8.5-minute miling. Next mile, keep it at 8.5-minute miling. I just had that 1 lap on my watch at every interval. That was all I was looking at. Keep this mile around there, keep this mile around there. Of course, it slowed to about 9-minute miling. My heart rate was really low. It was about 130, which is like low to mid zone 2 for me. It was really hot. I was fueling with what I could, and I felt like I was just it's just survival. I felt like I was just surviving, but the running was actually okay. Now, in terms of my run training, my longest run was 15 miles, which was 9 minutes per mile, so steadier than what I was running that day. And I hadn't really done a great deal. Well, that was it. That was my long run. My longest brick session was 12 miles, or outlaw half, 4 weeks before this event. So not a huge amount of run volume. So I knew it was going to bite me at some point. But if I'm honest, it didn't really properly bite until about 22, 23 miles. So at that point, the mental games start, don't they? And when I got to 22, I knew I had about 42 or 43 minutes to get to the finish. Now, I knew that it was going to measure a little bit short on my watch because of the GPS issues, so I had like 26 in mind that it was going to finish at. Now, 4 10-minute miles, when I've been running sub 9-minute miles for 22 miles, you think, yeah, every day of the week, done and dusted. It wasn't quite like that. I got to 23 and I felt really dizzy. I'd gone through an aid station and took on what I could. I hadn't ate anything for the last hour or so because I felt that sick. I couldn't get anything down me, and I knew that wasn't the right thing to do, but I physically couldn't get anything down me. I couldn't bring myself to like even pull a gel out of my pocket, or I did and then I held it for like 10 minutes. It was just, I couldn't do it. At 23, I walked, and that was the first walk that I'd done in the race other than aid stations and other than when I saw a Liz. So I thought this could be the crumbling point, but I know what I try and tell other people is have a plan. When it doesn't start going to plan, have a plan. So if I'm going to start walking, right, you're walking for a minute, then you're going to run for 2. Those sorts of things. I ended up walking for 2 minutes because I felt dizzy, felt like I was going to chuck up. I actually urinated myself involuntarily, so I didn't mean to, and I thought this could be the end of it. A gentleman came past me and he shouted me something to the effect of, come on Daniel, you've got X amount of time to get to the finish before sub 10, so he must have known we were in the same start wave or something. That really helped me, and I thought, right, what am I messing around at? Come on, let's get this done. So I then picked it up again, and I got a gel out of my pocket, and I opened it, and I felt like it took all my energy to rip the gel open, and then I squeezed like a little bit in my mouth, and it was on my tongue, and it must have been less than a quarter of a gel, so maybe like 10 grams of carbs, and I couldn't bring myself to swallow it at first, and I like rubbed it around my mouth. I was thinking, surely you absorb sugar through your gums, don't you? So I just like went like that. I then swallowed like the tiniest bit, but within 5 minutes I felt so much better, especially because I was telling myself that you've had a gel, you'll get to the finish now. And that was basically it. I won't say it was a miraculous turnaround, but I was able to run 9.5 minute miles ish, get to the finish, walk down the finish chute to finish in 9:52, marathon time of 3 hours and 48 minutes. That's my fastest full distance marathon by about 15 minutes. My fastest bike split in a full distance by 15 minutes. My swim was just about there. I actually took nearly an hour off my full distance PB. It was 10 hours 48 and I finished in 9:52. So I was absolutely over the moon. Performance wise, I feel like I've squeezed out everything that I'm capable of there. I don't feel like I could have done that any better. Even if you'd have said, right, in 6 months you're going to do Challenge Roth, I might have done a bit more long run specific stuff, but I still feel like the wheels do fall off at some point, and I was quite happy to get to 23 miles before that happened. I know many people DNF'd, or many people struggled at 10 miles in or so on. I was absolutely really buzzing, but I think that's just all down to pacing. And I know that perhaps, I know my cycling is a strength of mine, so saying, oh, I paced it and I rode 4:46, that sounds great. So I'm sure lots of people would love to ride 4:46, but just stick to your own zones, because it will pay off in the end. It feels like you're holding yourself back and you're losing time, but honestly you're not. So that's my day at Challenge Roth. I don't know what all the numbers to talk about the hot running wise. It was like 9 minute miling for the marathon, and that's absolutely fine by me. Will I do another full distance? Absolutely not. I have said this before, but I knew like before this weekend that I'd have no intentions of doing any more. They're so hard. I don't think it's possible to train properly for one whilst working full time and having a life and those sorts of things. But very happy with my performance. But yeah, absolutely no. But please, no other brands. Thanks to Zone 3 for sorting out the entry for Roth, by the way. But please, nobody else offer me anything silly, because I feel like I can't say no, because I do want to do these things, but man, it's hard. Well done to you if you took part in the event. Thank you to all the volunteers and everybody that makes that event happen. It is absolutely bonkers. I've covered that in the video that's already gone out. Thanks for all the support and all the messages. Honestly, it is overwhelming, but in a positive way. It's absolutely brilliant. I can't believe so many people actually care about me doing triathlon, so thank you very much. What's next for me is Outlaw Half Holcombe a week on Sunday. I am playing it by ear, but I'm 2 days on from Roth and I'm able to pedal the bike a little bit, so I'm hoping that I'll come round by Outlaw, but we will see. Sorry that's a long ramble, but I wanted to get that out there, and people do ask me, so I thought I might as well put a video together. Thank you very much for watching. If you haven't already though, do hit that subscribe button down below. Plenty more races to come, maybe not any more full distances. I'll see you again very soon.